The choice of FCC members is in many ways just as important to the culture in America as the choice of Supreme Court members. It's the FCC that decides what is acceptable consolidation of power and what isn't. It's the FCC that rules on issues like obscenity, sex and violence on television. It's the FCC that pushes or doesn't push for regulation of cable, that decides whether people would have a la carte choices in cable programming or not. It's the FCC that decides whether there should be a fairness doctrine on radio so that talk radio is not simply dominated by one point of view or another. So in terms of the lifeblood of this country, of our free speech, of our ability to debate and share opinions, our ability to have not just fat cats but ordinary people get their views known, to have local issues be just as important as national issues, the FCC really is in the driver's seat. And so it's tremendously important to people, whether they realize it or not, that the members of the FCC reflect the values that they have, and at least in current circumstances, that depends on who's the occupant of the White House. It's not only official policy that governs what goes on in the media. There's a lot of unofficial backslapping, log rolling, and campaign donating that makes a whole lot of difference. The National Association of Broadcasters is one of the most powerful lobbies in the country for two reasons. One is that its members are the people who cover politicians. And so how politicians are portrayed on the airwaves is at the discretion of the owners, general managers, and news directors who work at stations. The other is that those same politicians get a phenomenal amount of money from the broadcasters. So in many ways, it's a kind of iron triangle. The third element of the triangle is that politicians are not really covered all that much on the news. It's truly amazing that for all the money that they give, basically what they're paying for is the ability not to get bad coverage. They rarely get good coverage or any coverage, and instead the stations are going to rake in this cycle alone something like $3 billion in paid political ads, because that's how politicians get their money across. So here you have the American people who've given up their airwaves for free to the stations, and those stations, instead of covering politics and sending that message back to people so that they can understand what their elected officials are doing, instead of doing that, those stations are charging those politicians for the right to get their message out, and that money that those politicians are paying them are coming from the very people who in the first place gave away their airwaves for free. It's a real Ponzi scheme, and the people are the losers.